The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I am the founder of Teachers for Choice. And in New York, we are ready to rally. We are headed up to Albany, restore and reclaim our rights. Today, my guest is Naomi Wolf, who will be headed up with us, along with Mary Holland, myself, John Gilmore, Shannon Joy, Sophie Medina, Bobby Hancock, Sujata Gibson, and many, many more medical freedom fighters. We are rallying tomorrow, Wednesday, May 14th, in Albany. We just found out the outdoors is completely fenced off. So we will be rallying indoors, just like we did in January. We actually have a map of this indoors at the North Concourse. That's where you want to head to. When you head inside to Empire Plaza, you're looking for North Concourse. Ask security. If you come to a security checkpoint, they're going to scan you and stuff. You've gone too far. Don't go through a checkpoint. You don't need to get checked or scanned to come to the rally. That's when we actually go lobby after the fact. Tomorrow, we have a slate of bills that we are promoting that are good bills called the Human Rights Agenda. The Human Rights Agenda includes a number of bills, including the Let Us Work Act to bring back fired unvaccinated workers in New York City. Also, a bill to restore the religious exemption to vaccine mandates to attend school for children, which was taken away in 2019. The Education for All Act, which will restore the medical exemption in New York. Unbelievably, they're attacking medically fragile children in New York right now. We also have a bill that would require parents to be present when an immunization is given to a minor. And lastly, a bill that would allow for injured people from a mandated vaccine to sue the government that mandated the vaccine. So these are 5 good bills that we are pushing for on the human rights agenda. We have 2 bills that we are targeting as bills that need to be stopped. One is called Orwellianly the RFKJR Act. This act would make all adult vaccines reported to the adult vaccine database mandatorily. You see the sponsor there, Brad Hoylman, spying on people and spying on New Yorkers' medical records. That's really what would happen, because they don't want to know who's vaccinated. They know everyone who's vaccinated. They know everyone who's not. And then they could use the database to punish us. No job, no access to society, no education, all of those types of things. And one more bill is back. That is bad news. This is a bill allowing minors to get STD vaccines without parental knowledge or consent. That means the HPV vaccine, the Hep B vaccine, and the monkeypox vaccine would be allowed to be given to minors without consent. And everyone who could get there tomorrow, we really want you to be there. It's really an important one. But now I want to bring on my guest, who's going to be a featured speaker there. Everyone in my audience should know the amazing Naomi Wolf. Dr. Wolf, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to join my friends at CHD.
Thanks so much for being here. And you are a New Yorker, so it's just, we're honored and just so happy that you're coming up to battle against these bad bills and to help to fight for these good bills. A lot of people might not know this. You are one of the biggest supporters of Teachers for Choice and Bravest for Choice, the teachers and the firefighters, as well as the cops, sanitation workers, everyone who was fired in New York City for not getting the shot. You've shown us so much support and retweets and pointing to our events and all of these things. So I just want to personally thank you for standing with the fired workers. We so greatly appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And, let me just say, it's so weird that, how can I put it, the fired workers in New York City make our lives possible, and they put their lives and well-being on the line every single day, all the way from firefighters to police to sanitation workers. And they work so hard to make this city function. And I can't believe one of the wake-up moments of my life was going to New York to address the rally of first responders who were being fired for not taking this experimental injection, and just thinking, where's the left? How is this not a workers' issue? How is this not? Where are the New Yorkers? Where are all the New Yorkers whose garbage gets taken away every day, and whose kitchen fires get put out, and whose kids are kept safe by these people? It was very demoralizing. So thank you very much. They've got a very big place in my heart.
Yeah, you just raised the point that I haven't thought about in a while. Where was the left? My father was a bricklayer. My mother was a letter carrier. I was in the teachers union for over a decade. Proud U of T member in New York City. And yeah, just completely abandoned the working class in New York City at such a critical moment. But the tide has changed. We are definitely seeing. I can tell you, Naomi, in New York City, there are powerful sections and factions of unions that are now talking to us, that do now realize this is a working class issue, a labor rights issue.
I'm glad, but it's 4 years too late. They should have been there from the very start. That's what you have union dues for. Sorry.
No, exactly. No. You're 100% correct. But hopefully we can build those bridges moving forward. You heard me lay out what we have, bills we're supporting, bills that we're pushing back against. Just any comments that you have on any of those bills or the totality of it? What do you think about what we're dealing with in Albany, New York today?
Yeah, I mean, thank God for CHD fighting, in Albany, and everyone listening who can join us there. I also think it's very suspect that the outdoors is being closed off to us. We have a First Amendment right to freedom of assembly and to petition our government for redress of grievances. This is that. So I don't know why they're suspending our 1A free assembly. That's unconstitutional. But I guess when I listen to this list of bad bills, I'm sorry, the good bills and the bad bills, right? I just realize that the state is not stopping, right? The Marxist drive, the Marxist fascist drive of the state through pharma, and other means like curricula, to strip parents of basic rights to make decisions about their kids' well-being, as well as the kind of assumptions that are driving big pharma, like that minors are going to be sexually active, or that the decision about whether minors should take a medical procedure into their bodies that is predicated upon them being sexually active, rather than that being a conversation solely for parents, and the decision about what goes into their kids' bodies being solely for parents. It's so disturbing, and it's disturbing not just with this constant chipping away at parents' rights, which we didn't even used to have to call parents' rights, right, Michael? Because it was just called parenting, right? It was assumed that the state didn't have rights over your child. But also the grooming of children, how I was just thinking, when I was thinking about that bill, I was visualizing how young are these kids, right? I have a 13-year-old stepson, and what discussion is there going to be? What is it going to happen in a room with adults? Are adults going to take the kids out of class? Are they going to say, take off your sweater, roll up your sleeve, and the kid says, what's this for? And they say sexually transmitted diseases. Like, everything about it is groomery. Everything about it is traumatic and like almost ritualistic, a ritual of a scary thing happening where a child, doesn't have his or her parent around, can't give informed consent in any way, and is being manhandled by adults, and having things put in this child's body. It's this, I guess what I'm trying to say is the psychological breaking down of boundaries and desensitization. And I say this as a survivor of sexual assault in childhood, but like what I see is not just stripping away of parents' rights, but this constant iteration that the state and these allied interests are trying to raise children not to be able to say no to anything, or even to be able to trust their instincts when something's dangerous.
Wow, that is really powerful. And I'm going to add something to this here that I don't think you're aware of. In New York State, they are already giving STD-related vaccines to kids without parental knowledge and consent. In 2017, Andrew Cuomo, then governor, passed a regulation that allowed it to happen. I remember a specific occasion in 2019, a boy in the Bronx skinned his knee and went to the nurse where they had a full kind of hospitalized clinic, community clinic in the school. He went home and handed his mother a pamphlet about the HPV vaccine. And she said, "What is this?" He said, "I went to the nurse and I got the vaccine." That mother spoke up at that time. And a number of us activists were like, whoa, this could be a big moment, but it just went away. So it's a regulation. And they actually say we need this law to make legal what is already done at times in New York State. So that's the level of audacity that the state has right now. They're already doing something by fiat from the governor without the actual legislative act, but they're like, oh, we better get this legislation in before we get sued. And of course, if they actually get the legislation in, it's going to expand. To my knowledge, the main place that they do this is in Black and brown communities.
Ugh. I mean, that's just disgusting.
Yeah, I know.
And honestly, if they'll do that, what's going to keep them from injecting Depo-Provera into, you know, Black and brown
What is
minor?
Depo-Provera? What is
Oh,
that?
it's an injectable birth control product. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no limit, right? And the other thing that really concerns me is we now know that lipid nanoparticles have been known since 2017 to degrade the reproductive health of humans, male and female. And, as we move ahead into the future, the mRNA platform and the lipid nanoparticle encapsulation of the mRNA platform is so, like, biotech is so boostery on it. They've invested so much in it. It's not going to go away. So I'm seeing, I mean, this is a little bit random, but maybe not. I'm seeing a really dramatic physical change in today's teenagers. They're not developing normally. They're not developing normal secondary sex characteristics. They don't, develop like maturing males and females of our generation, or I'm much older than you, probably, mine and your generation. And I just mention this because if lipid nanoparticles are being injected into kids, or will be, that it is going to impede their or impair their secondary sex characteristics, to unknown effect, but possibly. I mean, we're seeing drops in fertility. These kids are not old enough probably to register in terms of, is their fertility impaired, but drops in normal sexual maturation, just aren't good for people's basic health, let alone fertility, their ability to father or mother children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just want to remind everybody, Naomi Wolf is a featured speaker tomorrow in Albany, May 14th. We are going back to restore and reclaim our rights, our exemptions, our jobs. We have an all-star lineup: Mary Holland, Naomi Wolf, so many others. Please come up and get to this if you can. If you're too far out from New York, CHD TV will be live streaming this tomorrow. Naomi, you're bringing up so many important points. What's happening to our youth, what's happening with what's being forced upon them, mandate, the state coming in and taking authority over our children, taking away parental rights. This is something you've really been able to uncover how dangerous this is in your most recent book, the Pfizer papers, which was a very, very lengthy process that you went through with other researchers. I believe it officially came out in its entirety in December of 2024. Talk to people about this important work.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, the common thread is definitely we should be on high alert, as a species, and certainly as New Yorkers, against bills like the bad ones that you've identified, and very vigilant to support the good bills, because we've been through a horrible science experiment on the human population already that nearly was unrecoverable from. And so the Pfizer papers is, shows what happens when you give blanket consent or coerced consent when nefarious people want to get experimental things into your body or your kids' bodies. Basically, Pfizer papers came out of a successful lawsuit, I'm sure your audience is familiar with it, by Aaron Siri against the Food and Drug Administration. And the FDA asked the court to keep the internal Pfizer papers, which were at the center of this lawsuit, hidden for 75 years. Good selection there. You knew what I was going to say. And the judge didn't agree, so these documents were compelled to be released. Steve Bannon and I both kind of realized as journalists that we were looking at the risk of these documents being lost to history because they were so voluminous and so technical that no reporter would have the bandwidth or background to understand them, go through them. So it was Bannon's idea, actually, he kind of provoked me on air to have a crowdsourced call for experts. And I did, having never done anything like that before. And we got 3,250 doctors and scientists ultimately to join together in 6 working groups for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And they went through these 450,000 internal secret documents. And what they found, and they issued 109 reports, which, under the leadership of my COO, Amy Kelly, and then I edited them and she edited them to make them readable to lay people. But the bottom line, Michael, is that these experts documented the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history. And you can read all of it in the Pfizer Papers book, also pinned on our site for free if you don't have money for the book. But they knew that they knew the vaccines didn't stop COVID. So all the work you've done and the first responders did to fight mandates, the mandates were based on a lie, right? That the Pfizer knew within a month that the vaccines, you're more likely to get COVID and actually die, be hospitalized and die with COVID if you're vaccinated than if you're unvaccinated. And Pfizer's language was vaccine failure and failure of efficacy 1 month in. And the only way they got to 95%, safe and effective, you're more likely to be hospitalized and die if you're not vaccinated, was by hiding the deaths of 8 people who died with COVID who were vaccinated. They illegally hid those deaths in order to make that math work. If they had not hidden those bodies, they would have had to say what we now know to be true. You're more likely to be hospitalized and die if you're vaccinated. But they also hid tens of thousands, 140,000 plus adverse events in 3 months. But not, fever, pain at the injection site, what was disclosed, side effects like strokes, heart attacks, blood clots, lung clots, leg clots, florid neurological events, dementias, Alzheimer's, tremors, Bell's palsy. Joint pain is the #1 side effect. I know so many people who are getting hip replacements, ankle replacements, knee replacements. #2 side effect is myalgia, muscle pain. People just don't feel good and don't know why, and doctors don't know why. #3 side effect is COVID, of course, because the vaccines didn't work, but also just catastrophic liver damage, kidney damage, skin damage, eye damage. The lipid nanoparticles traverse the blood-brain barrier, so you're getting, and we broke this story actually in 2023, I believe, but you're getting personality changes, impairment of cognition, brain fog, memory loss, people not being able to restrain their rage. Road rage incidents are off the charts. This is brain damage, essentially, from the vaccines. And then to move on to what concerns me the most, that's not even the centerpiece of this crime. The centerpiece, Michael, is a 360-degree intentional. You have to conclude it's intentional from the way that the study is structured. But that's my conclusion, right, as a journalist. An intentional assault on human reproduction, as I mentioned, and human fertility. COVID is a respiratory virus, allegedly, but there's almost nothing on breathing, oxygen levels in the blood, nasal passages, lungs. It's all about sex and babies. everything from they knew that the lipid nanoparticles are blocking ovaries, which is in the news again with a 30% drop in live births out of the Czech Republic. And the new study that shows that women are losing 60% of their irreplaceable eggs if they're vaccinated. We know the mechanism. We broke this story in 2023. The lipid nanoparticles accumulate in the ovaries and block them. Menstrual damage, catastrophic, right? There's a chart in the Pfizer papers showing 15,000 women bleeding every day, 10,000 women with no periods at all, totally infertile, 7,500 women bleeding twice a month, women hemorrhaging, agonizing cramps, just life-changing conditions, which also, of course, if you know 8th grade biology, are going to suppress healthy fertility. The lipid nanoparticles impair the placenta. Babies are being born prematurely. Fetal maternal deaths are up 40% because placentas are compromised. And then 80% miscarriage rate in the Pfizer papers. And there's a section, the pregnancy and lactation report that went to the White House in April of 2021 that shows that Pfizer knew they were causing miscarriages. 2 babies died in utero, and Pfizer concluded it was due to quote unquote maternal exposure to the vaccine. There was a chart of babies who were getting very sick. 1 baby died from nursing from vaccinated moms. And this went to the White House. And 3 days later, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who, by the way, resigned 3 days after we issued our story about this, she, in 2021, gave a press conference with this document in hand, as we know, just from the transmission dates, stating to the women of America, there is no bad time to get your COVID vaccine before you get pregnant, during your pregnancy, or after your baby is born. So it is a horrific, I would say intentional crime. And the last thing I'll add to that is that my research showed that the Pfizer vaccine is actually, the IP was transferred from Pfizer to China, not a Chinese individual or a Chinese company, but the SEC filing says China, the country, meaning the Chinese Communist Party, in 2021. So then China created 1 billion doses, not for their own population, for export. Right. They opened 11 manufacturing plants in North America, 14 in the United States, and they injected the West. And it's the West that's showing the catastrophic collapse in live births and excess deaths. So in conclusion, it's a bioweapon.
It's just devastational, everything that you lay out. And as you said earlier, it just makes the overwhelming case how the state needs to have nothing to do with what our health choices is, with what is mandated on us, with what is forced on us. This concept of forcing anything on us with a track record like this is preposterous. And again, that's why we need you to come to Albany. We need your support as we go there. Tomorrow, May 14th, we're going to be rallying to restore and reclaim our rights here in the state of New York. Naomi, I have one last question for you on this. You talked about, so for 75 years, Pfizer wanted to hide all of this stuff, and we see why. It's absolutely devastational. But a lot of this stuff was known when mandates started coming. Rochelle Walensky, you brought up, August 2021, she goes on national media and says, it does not stop transmission. The COVID shot, excuse me, cannot stop transmission of the virus. The next month, they mandated it. The very next month in New York City, they forced it on us when the crux of their argument as to why they had to do it had just been devastated by their own person heading the CDC. This shows a certain disconnect and a massive, massive war and psyop that was so effective on the public. It was out in the open. Your reason for saying why I have to get this shot, your people have already said, it's false. So talk to us just a little bit about that as we end the segment here. Talk to us about what happened in COVID, the censorship, the war. You were a part of this. You were targeted in this as well too.
I'm still targeted. X keeps locking me out for linking to my own free Substack, calling it a violation of their terms of service. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I remember that period of time, and I remember thinking, my first question was, does the vaccine stop transmission? Because the whole narrative of social distancing and masking, is about transmission. And I also knew just from reading, I'm not a medical doctor. I have an English literature DPhil. I knew from reading 400 years of journals and memoirs that everything they were doing in what we call a PSYOP, like crowding multi-generational households together, closing playgrounds, closing beaches, keeping kids from getting sunlight and vitamin D, is the opposite of what public health knowledge has been about since the end of the 19th century, actually since the Crimean War, when Florence Nightingale realized that soldiers need fresh air and sunlight and ventilation to not infect each other. But the whole crux of the argument, as you point out, don't kill grandma, was about transmission. So of course, my first question is, well, and it didn't make sense, right? How does getting vaccinated stop you from transmitting? It just, no other vaccine stops transmission, right? Vaccines have to do with your own immune system, even if they're working the way they should. So that really didn't make sense to me. But I do remember, hearing that confirmation, which I'd been, sure was the case, just because they never showed how it could stop transmission, right? And this was before I'd even seen the Pfizer papers. And then being astonished that this didn't bring everything to a halt. In fact, I remember December of 2021, I'll always feel like President Biden owes me a couple of $1,000s because I was supposed to go to a Christmas gathering with my relatives. And after all of the announcements about how the vaccine doesn't stop transmission, people whom I love were so brainwashed that they didn't want, after President Biden's winter of death speech, they didn't want to be around us because we weren't vaccinated. And so you're right to identify a PSYOP. People couldn't think rationally. They couldn't put one and one together and make two. It seems like they could not coordinate that new official information with the existing official drumbeat of vaccinate, 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 save grandma. So I don't know how to answer that, except that it's still a mystery where the pieces are still falling into place. Dr. Michael Nell's book about brainwashing and propaganda is very important. It really, this repetition and isolation and deprivation of human contact really does impair your brain. I think that, eventually I think we're going to find out even more nefarious things about why, to this day, people are not reasoning the way they used to before 2020. I mean, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but my colleague Josh Steilman has shown a number of very disturbing patents about kind of altering consciousness. I'm not saying that's real, but we also don't know that it's not real, because you suddenly had a bizarre situation of really mass hypnosis in which about a third of the population was reasoning normally, and 2/3 of the population could no longer reason. And one can speculate, but and then I've veered all the way into really metaphysical questions like, is this a battle between good and evil on a spiritual plane? Because the mass credulity just doesn't make sense. These are intelligent, thoughtful people who are educated exactly the way I'm educated, and we're no longer able to reason. And many people have talked about personality changes, in their loved ones that could have to do with the damage to the prefrontal cortex, but may have to do with a confluence of other factors that, some of which we don't even know or understand. So it's definitely a PSYOP, but it's the most effective, sophisticated PSYOP I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I'm scared for the future, because if we don't figure out what made everyone dumb and unable to reason, many people to this very day were very susceptible to whatever the channel will be changed to in the future.
Very, very well said. A lot to think about. Naomi Wolf, get all of her work. Check her out at Daily Clout, dailyclout.io. You can get her book, The Pfizer Papers, there. It's pinned on the site there as well, too. Check it out. And if you are in New York, come rally with us tomorrow. Naomi Wolf's going to be there. Mary Holland's going to be there. Shannon Joy, Sophie Medina, Sujata Gibson, Bobby Ancox, and so many more. Naomi Wolf, thank you so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to see you in Albany tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. If you can make it up to New York tomorrow, do it. Make sure we still have buses. You can find that out at teachersforchoice.org. If you can't, it will be live streamed here at chd.tv starting around 10 a.m. tomorrow. So check it out there. And now we have yet another people study to show to you. Let's show that, Lou.
All right, so tell everybody who you are.
My name is Sky Bertram.
And you are?
Rick Watson, her father.
You're her father.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Tell us from the beginning what happened.
Well, she was born on January 11th, 2011.
And her name?
Carrie Bertram.
And how was your pregnancy when you were carrying her?
It was a bit rough. I started going into labor early. So they gave me shots to boost her lungs.
So while you were pregnant, they gave your baby shots?
They gave me shots for the baby.
Do you know what those shots were?
They didn't really explain. They just told me it was to boost her lungs so that to make sure that her lungs she could breathe if she were to be born early. It was a series of 2 shots. I had to get one, and then I had to come back to the hospital 24 hours later to get another one. They had me on bed rest. Come January 11th, they wanted to induce me, so I went with it.
How old was she? How many weeks was she when
She was 37 weeks and like 2 days.
And she's your third child. She's your third baby, so you're a fairly experienced mother.
Yeah, she's my third baby. The delivery was kind of horrible. The doctor was not in there in time. I was crowning and had to push, and I had to wait what seemed like forever, but it was probably like 30 minutes that I had to wait, and I kept feeling the urge to push.
Why were they telling you to wait?
Because the doctor wasn't in there yet.
So you had to wait with your head, the baby's head crowning for around 30 minutes. The doctor wasn't ready to deliver your baby.
Exactly. And when they finally started allowing me to push, he was actually in the hall when she was delivered, and the nurse delivered her.
And how was she when she was born?
She was perfect. All the nurses said that she stopped at a salon on the way out. She has these really dark roots and frosted tips. I've got this picture right here. It shows, it's really hard to capture on camera.
That's her day one.
This is the day after she was born.
The day after she's born.
And you can see the dark roots and the frosted tips.
Yeah, wow. People pay money for that kind of hair.
Yeah, she got it naturally. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it?
She was such a sweet baby. She was happy all the time.
All right, so talk to us. So how did they give her any injections on her first day?
They did. I can't remember which ones they gave her, but I know they did give her injections because they told me that she needed them, and my other 2 daughters got them, and they seemed to be okay. I was pretty much one of the peoples that, doctors know best, and I regret that.
Sure, I know. This is a very hard story for you to tell, and we're really proud of you telling it. We know how difficult it is. We're gonna look at some pictures of look how old is she there? Look at this. She was about a month and a half. That was right before her shots. So she's developing.
She's smiling. Yes, that was one of her first smiles. I got her to smile right there, and I just had to take the picture. I was like, oh, it's so cute.
So cute. It's so cute. And
this picture is about a week before she passed away.
A little bit blurry, but she's
Maybe we could turn it that way.
And so talk about what happened. So you went in to feel well baby checkup, is that what happened?
Well, we went in and she was fine. She got her shots. After her shots, I want to talk about her a little bit right before her shots.
Please do.
She was very sweet. She was so happy all the time, and we had she had this routine. She was so smart. She knew she couldn't get in bed with me with Daddy in bed. And she knew that when Daddy went to work, she didn't get in bed with me. Like, she knew when he went to work. As soon as he walked out the door, she was awake and crying. She didn't want a bottle. I would change her diaper, and I'd snuggle her in my arm, and she would just sleep right there. And, you know, I'd watch her, and it was mine and her time. You know, because I had 2 other ones, and she just loved that time.
Okay.
After her shot, she changed.
Do you know what shots she had that day?
I should have brought them. I have her shot records in the car. I know she got the DTaP. I know that she got the DTaP for a fact.
MMR?
No, not MMR. That's a year-old shot. But she did get the DTaP. And she changed. She was crying all the time. Nothing made her happy anymore. We used to do this thing where we would cradle her in our arms, and then we'd lift her little arm up and we'd eat her ribs, and she loved it, but she didn't love that anymore. She cried and screamed. The only way she would sleep is if me or there was somebody else, and we would hold her, and that's the only way she would really sleep. And then occasionally you had to swaddle her so tight. Anyway, about a week before she actually passed away, I was telling everybody something was wrong with her. Her color changed, she didn't act right, and she swelled up. I called Monday. That's the picture where she had swelled up.
You can see that. See how swollen. So going from, let's have a look. We're going to go from, I'm just going to try and put this so you can see. So this is her happy before the shots, and this is her as she has swollen up. You can see a week before she passed. If you look at those two like that. Okay.
Anyway, I took her to the doctor. I called Monday. I got her a doctor's appointment Tuesday, the very next day. And I told the doctor there's something wrong with her. They checked her blood. They done some chest x-rays. And they told me she had a little cold. Just a cold. And that very Friday, Good Friday, 2 days before Easter, she passed away in her sleep. We went to the hospital. You know, we tried CPR. We called the ambulance. The ambulance, they were outside for like an hour before they even got her to the hospital, and the hospital's 5 minutes away. We got to the hospital, and they kept me and my husband in the triage room with an officer. They treated us. We couldn't leave that room like we had done something wrong. The doctor finally come and got us, and they took us to another ER room, and that's where they told us that she passed away. They couldn't get her back. They let us go in there where she was, and I held her, and I just prayed for her to start breathing. They finally told me that I had to they had to take her, and they said it was Mississippi law. Anybody under 18 had to have an autopsy, whether I wanted it or not, which of course I wanted it because I want to know what was wrong with her. The preliminary results that they told me, it was undetermined, and then they told me the final results was undetermined, and I had to petition the state of Mississippi for her death certificate because they don't recognize undetermined death. I didn't settle with the undetermined death because I can't move on from that. When I talked to the pathologist, they flew somebody in from Texas, a woman from Texas, in to do her autopsy. And when I called and spoke with her, I asked her if it was SIDS. And she had said that it wasn't SIDS, that it's like SIDS, but they don't call it SIDS anymore. And she didn't have that either. They called it sudden unexpected infant death syndrome. She said it was like that, unexpected, but SIDS leaves signs like milk in the lungs, and she didn't have any of that. She didn't have any signs of suffocation. She didn't have anything. So it's just stuck at undetermined. When we left the hospital, the police wouldn't let us go home without them. They had to escort us home, and they had to go in and take pictures of her bed and of my room and treated us like we did it, like we killed her. And that hurt. There was rumors going around saying my 3-year-old had told the police that my husband dropped her on her head, and of course that didn't happen. My 3-year-old could barely even make a sentence at the time. The funeral was really hard. And this is where I get to see her now. This is where I get to go talk to her. The CVS pictures are Walgreens pictures are very poor quality. It cuts a lot of it off and zooms it at the top. It says, "Our loving daughter." And right here it says Care Bear, because that was her nickname. The whole time I was pregnant with her, I called her Care Bear since we were naming her Carrie. I don't know if you want to show it. I've got this tattoo for her. But I know in my heart,
Granddaddy.
I know in my heart that it was her vaccinations. I have found so much peace after watching Vax, the movie. I have found so much peace. And if it wasn't for him, I don't even know what I would think, because I was all for vaccinations. And he talked me into going to see the movie Vax. You know, I'm a pretty open-minded person. And I watched that movie and I was blown away. Like, there's so much evidence. And why would they do this to our children? It's our choice, you know? They're our kids. Why do they get to make the decisions for them? And, you know, I'm not completely against vaccinations, because I know some have helped, but we need safer vaccinations. We need the metals taken out of them. We don't need all that.
So as Grandpa and Father too, it's beautiful. Really, what goes through your mind when you think of what they did to your granddaughter?
It angers me. It angers me that this is allowed to continue. We haven't had no answers, and for some reason, Cheryl Peoples invited me to the MPVR group, and I started studying and started researching. And when we had the chance to see Vax, the Lord told me I had to get my daughter there because there was answers that she needed. And he was right.
You're absolutely right.
A couple more things I would like to add is, you know, the health department is involved. The health department don't even keep track The only thing they keep track of is if your child is up to date on their vaccinations. Carrie passed away at 3 months, 11 days. She didn't make it to her 4-month shot. She passed away. The health department kept sending me stuff in the mail telling me that she was behind. And it brought back everything all over again. They just kept sending it and sending. I finally called them and I told them, I said, do you guys not communicate? She's passed away. Stop sending me this stuff. That's all they cared about was her getting her vaccinations. That's ridiculous. She passed away. You should know that. I mean, and I don't remember getting a pathology report at the time that she passed away. And last week I had called the coroner in Boonville. It is a new coroner than when she passed away. And when she passed away, everything was on paperwork and not computer, and they didn't transfer anything to the computer from that. He had told me he would go and try to find her files because I requested the pathology report, the investigation report, the name of the pathologist and phone number, and he said he would get that for me. He called me yesterday and told me he hadn't forgotten me, but they didn't have a file on her. So he told me that he is going to contact the state medical examiner and see if they have anything. Like, he didn't know anything. He was asking me questions like, did she go to the hospital and how she passed away and all that. He didn't have anything on her. Where is her file? It's just not there.
I really are no words to, you do have a lot of support, you have a lot of, so much love coming in here. Your story is hugely important.
Even if it saves one.
You can know that it will. Now, which one can we have?
Oh, you can have all. You can have.
No, do you have copies?
Yes, on my phone. I printed these this
Well,
morning.
this is the one that we'd love to travel with us because she's happy.
It would be nice seeing that she's kind of going around the U.S.
Right, so can you hold down a sec while I stick it? I'm going to stick it on the. You can choose where she is. I'm just going to get the sellotape. 1 second. Carrie is officially on board with us.
It's out of focus. I don't know what to do to it. Oh, there we go.
And I'll
Care
take
if I take a picture of that?
Of course you can. So Hayley, meet Carrie, meet Eric. Got it. There she goes. Right, we are now going to go and sign the bus spells. Do you remember what number?
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I am very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.